Welcome to this instructional video on how to handle the utility matrix puzzle in Microeconomics AP. Now, this is one of the more involved problems you will deal with, but they all tend to work the same way. You're given a limited amount of money to spend, a small range of goods to spend it on, and the value of those choices to the consumer. Economists call the units of personal value utils, or even utils of happiness. For example, let's say you could hire a guy to slap a pie in your face for $5. Now, I don't know why you'd want to do that, but let's just say that you could. Or, for the same money, you could purchase a delicious sandwich. I bet you would choose the sandwich because its utility value is higher for most people. However, determining a numerical value for these utils is really difficult, and they vary from person to person wildly. And that's why the utils are provided for us in all of the problems that you will do when it comes to the utility matrix issue. All right, let's begin. Here are this problem's parameters, and I'm going to give them to you one at a time. When we are at the bottom of this page, you may want to pause it and see if you can do it yourself, particularly if this is more of a review rather than learning it for the first time. Okay, so one of the things that you can do is buy 20 apples for $4, and you see that it gives you 16 utils of happiness. But there's a catch. And guys, on these AP problems, there's always a catch. In the second half of the sentence, you see that as soon as we buy the subsequent bag of 20 apples, the utility gets cut in half. When we buy the third bag of apples for the same $4, the utils are halved again, and so on. This makes sense and brings up another important aspect of microeconomics: diminishing marginal returns. Let's go back and look at that $5 sandwich we talked about earlier. How much would you be willing to pay for the second sandwich after you've already enjoyed the first one? What about a third? What about a fourth? Sometimes the utility can turn negative, because if you keep eating those sandwiches, you're going to get sick. And that's a clear negative util experience because it's the opposite of happiness. All right, the next purchase we can make is going to be for an Xbox game, which costs $60 for 100 utils of happiness. Again, if we buy another Xbox game, the same thing happens in terms of diminishing utility as it did with the apples. The third and final choice is to save your money. It looks like you can do that here in increments of $8, and anything less than that accrues no utils. But, on the other hand, there is no diminishing returns on saving units of $8 beyond the first unit. So, every single time you save $8, you're going to get 11 utils. Lastly, we learn that we will be buying on behalf of Anna. She has $105 to spend and access to all three choices. We are asked to figure out how much is left using the parameters of Anna's preferences when it's all said and done. Okay, here's how you figure it out. Now, this is where all the magic happens, and it's critical to get this portion right. As you saw, all the prices are different, and you get a different amount of utils for each one of those choices. Plus, the utils of the same choices change as you buy more of them. So how do you make valid comparisons among all these options? The answer is simple. You derive a utils per dollar approach for every single choice you can make. When you determine what choices yield the most utils for $1, then your decisions become hierarchical and thus easily derived. Let's begin with the apples. You get 16 utils for those $4. That means when you buy the first bag of 20 apples, you're getting 4 utils for $1. This is where we can keep track of the diminishing returns rather easily. If we're getting half of the utils for the second bag of 20 apples, again for the same $4, that means we're only getting 8 utils for that $4. That means that we're only getting 2 utils per dollar for the second round of apples. Obviously, we could take this to an absurdly low amount of utils, but you will not run into a problem that requires you to go beyond 4 iterations of any single choice. Rarely there might be 5, but we're going to keep it here at 4 to stop doing more work and see if we just get lucky. Now, this one here is self-explanatory. If you take 100 utils and divide by $60, you're going to get 1.67 utils for every dollar you spend on that Xbox game. Now, if you recall in the setup, it said that you're going to round to the nearest tenth, so we're going to make this 1.7 utils per dollar. Okay, it also said that we could run into diminishing returns, but if you think about it mathematically, we don't have to worry about accounting for the second game, because if we were to buy 2 games, then Anna would be well over her budget of $105. So even if we buy the first game, we're never going to be able to afford the second one. Lastly, this is our savings choice. Anna gets 11 utils of happiness for every $8 she saves. Thus, that's 1.4 utils for every dollar saved in bundles of $8. Not 7 and not 9. It's always going to be 8. Now let's make it discernible. You can see that I have a grid here that is 3 by 6 blocks in size, and that's going to leave room for the categorical headings up at the top, as well as a bottom row for the totals, which will become important later. I chose a grid that had 4 blocks in between the top row and the bottom row for a reason, and I've already mentioned that reason. There's a good chance that one of the 3 choices is going to have 4 rounds of purchases. And I bet it's going to be the apples because they're the cheapest, and that tends to be how these things work out. Now, I do want to point out in the upper left-hand corner that I have written down exactly how much money I have to start, and I recommend that you do that as well. All right, let's begin with the first block of those tasty apples. No mystery here. It involves a purchase of 20 apples, and it's going to cost her $4 for those 16 utils. I encourage you to write it just like this. The benefits will become readily apparent here in a few minutes as we work the problem. The most important piece of data in this block, and all the other ones, is what you see in the upper right-hand corner of that block. It is the ratio of utils to $1. And specifically in this case, it's 4 utils for every $1 we spend on that first round of apples. If you only put one thing in this block in your own problems, that's the thing that you're going to need. Moving on to the second block. If this selection is made, then we're dealing with a lot of the same information. However, I've changed a few things. Anna is not just buying 20 apples when she makes this second purchase, is she? No, she's not. She's really getting 40 apples, so I put that in there just to keep proper tabs on it. Once again, we're getting half of the utils for the same amount of money, and the math in this block lines up accordingly. All I did for these last 2 blocks of column 1 was to follow the logic of the first 2. That brings us to the Xbox game, and we know there's only going to be 1 purchase made if there's going to be any purchases of games at all. That means I get to leave the 3 below blank. And when it comes to this individual Xbox game, I hope she makes the right choice and chooses something from the Halo franchise. Regardless, you can see that I merely transpose the data from the setup into this block as I did with the apples. The last column is by far the easiest to comprehend. Nothing is going to change at all from the very first set of data to the very last one. It's all 1.4 utils for every dollar saved, gaining her 11 utils and subtracting $8 from the running total. All of them are the same. It's not going to be that hard to manipulate it. It's time to make our selections and work through this problem thoroughly and correctly. Here's how you do it. First things first, let's analyze all of the ratios where it's utils over the dollar spent to get them. You'll see that 4 utils is the largest numerator of all of these ratios in the table. So that is higher than 1.7, it's higher than 1.4, and it's higher than 2, 1, or 0.5. That's why Anna is going to make it her first choice. So the first thing Anna's going to do is buy 20 apples with her $105. I am going to keep track of that first purchase by writing a 1 right here, and then I'm going to denote that it cost her $4, and so she has $101 left. It purchased her 16 units of happiness. I don't have to write that down because it's already here, so I'm just going to underline it. What numerator is the highest of all the remaining ratios? Well, that's right here. It is 2 utils. So I know I'm going to make this my second purchase. I put the big fat 2 here so that I know this block has already been selected. And I'm going to have $97 left if my math is right. And I'm going to have another 8 utils. 16 plus 8 is 24. I'm good to go. Where is the next purchase going to be? It's pretty clear that it's going to be the big, nice Xbox game. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put a 3 here because that's my third purchase. I'm going to have $37 remaining because 97 minus 60 is 37. And I'm going to have 124 utils after this third purchase is consumed. 100 plus 24 is 124. Where is the fourth purchase going to be? It's going to be right here. And I know that I will have $29 left. And I will have 135 utils accrued. Fifth purchase is right here. I'm going to be down to $21. I'm going to have 146 utils so far. Sixth purchase, pretty clear that it's going to be right there. I'm going to be down to $13. I am going to raise my utils to 157. And my seventh purchase is going to be right here. I'm starting to run out of money, but I do have enough to save another $8. That's going to cost me $8, giving me $5 left. I will now add up my utils, giving me a total of 168 utils. Now it looks like we're done, but we're not. Don't forget, the third round of apples still only costs $4. I got $5 left. I'm grabbing those apples. So that means I'm going to have $1 left after I make my 8th purchase. The only other thing I can get is to save a 5th round of $8. Well, that ain't going to cut it because I only have $1. And apples cost $4. Well, I'm pretty much done. I'm going to put an F here to represent that's my final amount. I will add my 4 utils left to my 168 utils, giving me 172 utils. That's final because I can't buy anything else. I'll put an F right there. The last thing I do, guys, is I box out all other remaining purchases to illustrate that I did not forget about that I intentionally left it out because I cannot buy it, nor would I want to buy it. So that represents how you manipulate the grid. I do have the totals boxes, and I know that the answer to the question is going to be $1 because the question was, how much money is left over after Anna makes all of her logical purchases? Well, there it is. It's $1. Now, on your AP tests that you take in the spring, they never ask just one question after going through all of this, and the same is true for your Econ tests in school. So here's what we have this row for. Let's add up how many rounds of purchases were made for apples. There were 3 rounds of purchases made. And in this case, I can just put the apples. I know that I had purchased 60 apples total, and that the amount of money I spent on it was $12 because there were 3 bags at $4 a piece, so I'm going to total that up. And the utils of happiness did decrease, but I can still add them up. 16 plus 8 is 24, plus another 4 is 28. I have 28 utils of apple goodness. All right. Now, I don't have to worry about totaling the Xbox games, do I? Because there was only one possible purchase of Xbox games if they were going to be purchased at all. All the totals can be found in the only box that was executed. So that leaves savings. Now, I know that there were 4 rounds of savings and that it cost me $32 because each round was $8, and that I accrued 44 utils of happiness. So now I have all the information it takes to answer any question that is thrown at me. For example, how many utils were accrued through all of your Apple purchases and your savings? Well, you would take 44 and then you would add 28 to it. So the answer to that question would be 72. What if they ask how many utils were accrued through the sixth purchase? Well, it's right here. There were 157 utils accrued through the sixth purchase. All you have to do is read your table because you methodically put in each piece of information as you move forward. This wraps up a rather in-depth tutorial on the utility matrix problems you will run into in Microeconomics AP. My name is Jim Leck, and I'm a teacher at Montgomery Bell Academy in Nashville, Tennessee, and I've enjoyed making this video for you. So stay tuned for further tutorials in AP Econ. Until then, keep thinking like an economist. You'll be better off for it in the long run.